Alright, so this is going to be a Doomfist guide on how to bounce, like what you can bounce off of, how to do a turn punch, how to do a turn punch into a bounce, how to figure out why you're not bouncing high enough, or how to bounce really high, um, and how to bounce downwards. Like you bounce and you go down. I mean, I don't, it's weird, but anyways, you go to game browser, create a game. I'm gonna load my preset, but I'm gonna show you guys how to get infinite cooldown to Doomfist. You just click settings, heroes, Doomfist. Rising uppercut cooldown time, rocket punch cooldown, seismic slam cooldown, make it all 0. Ultimate duration, infinite ultimate duration, turn it on. Spawn with ultimate on, enabled. Ultimate generation, all of them make them 500%. Scroll all the way to the bottom, and if you want infinite ammo, just turn this one on. Now we want to go on Hanamura, so just go to maps, go to none, go to Hanamura, and start the game. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to go over is how to bounce. Okay, it's very easy. Now, the most basic part of bouncing is you rocket punch at something and you press space. That's like the most basic part of it. But I'm going to show you guys how to figure out why you're not bouncing high enough. So, basically, you want to rocket punch at this rock and you want to press space. Now, you see how I was only able to slam here and here? That means I press space like at a decent time, but if you press space as late as possible, you'll be able to slam up here without using uppercut. And that's how you get the maximum height, is by pressing space as late as possible. Now, if you look on the top left, I have 20 ping, which means it's a very low ping, which is nice. But that means if you're at 80 ping and you try to press space right before your character actually hits this, you're not going to bounce at all. You're going to have to kind of do it a little bit more earlier. And based on your ping, you're going to have to figure that out on your own. So that's one issue with bouncing, is your ping will affect the way you bounce. So if you have low ping, you just press space as late as possible, and you'll be able to do this type of slam where you can bounce off of this and you can slam up here. Now, if you can bounce off of this and always get an indicator and always slam up here every single time, that means you're pressing space as late as possible, and that's the best way to bounce off of things. It gives you more options to slam, and it also gives you more damage by gaining more distance. So if you're only slamming over here, like you can't reach this or that, that means you're pressing space a little bit too early, so try to press space a little bit more later. And if you're only able to slam up here and not up there, that means you're pressing space at a decent time, but try to press space just a little bit more later than that, and you'll be able to get up here constantly. I also recommend you hold W after you bounce off of things and look at the direction you want to go, because it'll carry the momentum. If you just press space, you might not be able to really slam up there, especially with the nerf distance. But you can see I'm holding W and I'm able to slam up here consistently. So that's how you figure out why you're not bouncing high enough, and that's how you get a higher bounce. Now, what can you bounce off of in this game? Literally anything. You could literally bounce off of anything, and I'll explain that in a second. So let me just test this really quick. So you can see this, I want to bounce off of this from here, but you can see this is really high, and that's a problem. I can't bounce off of something that high. But if I were to charge my rocket punch, I can bounce. Like, not bounce, but I could jump while charging my rocket punch. And if I learn the height, and I let go of my punch at the right time, while like I'm bouncing, and I press space at the right time, I can bounce off of this. So it looks something like this, if I don't mess it up, obviously. You see that? I can bounce off of this, even though it's too high for me to do it normally. I have to charge my punch, jump, and then figure out the height, and then press space, and I'll be able to bounce off of this. Every height is different, so it's just based on memory. Like, once you figure it out, you'll understand how to do it every single time. So that's another thing with higher objects that you want to bounce off of. You're going to have to jump first and then press space again. So you're basically pressing space 2 times. Yeah, so turn punching. Very easy. You just charge your rocket punch, and while your character is punching, you can look left or you can look right. So here, I'll show you. So I let go of my rocket punch, I look to the left, and I'm looking over here, but like my character's still going in a straight line. But if I were to press space at the end of my punch, which looks something like this, I'll gain more distance, obviously, if you guys didn't know that. But if I were to look right and press space, I'll do a turn punch, and I'll go around corners. You don't have to press it at the end of your punch. You could literally press it whenever you want. Just make sure you're turning to the direction you want to go. So like, let's say I want to go through this door. I just charge my punch, and I look through the door, and I just press space, and I'll jump through the door. It takes practice to get that consistently. Yeah, so you just want to practice doing turn punches. You'll be able to go around corners and stuff like that, and you'll be able to do combos like this, where you can like turn punch into like things like that, and like it'll be like very unexpected. Instead of being like this, where you're very obvious with your punch, you can hide behind this, and then you could do a turn punch, and they won't expect that. So once you understand how to do turn punches, you can combine that into a bounce. Now I'm going to show you guys on Volskaya, because I'll show you guys what's the purpose of turn punching into a bounce. It's very useful. So for my first point, this object right here, if I want to bounce off of this, it's not going to work. It doesn't matter how many times I try it, it's just not going to work at all. So I mean, you'll get like a maybe a tiny bounce, but let's say I'm standing over here and I try to bounce off of this. You see, it worked perfectly fine, but it's not working when I'm over here. So how do we fix that? You just want to punch close to it, not directly on it, but like maybe like around here, and you're gonna turn and you're gonna press space, and it's like you're technically standing here and bouncing it off like that, but you're just kind of doing a turn punch into a bounce. So I'm gonna aim here, then I'm gonna look to the right before my character even hits this, and I'm just gonna press space. So it looks something like this. You see that? I just did a turn punch into a bounce, and that's how you could do it. So another useful spot, I mean, this applies everywhere. Like, you can bounce literally off of anything in this game. So I'll explain that in a second again. So if I try to bounce off of this, it doesn't really work. I'm just getting pushed to the side, which isn't really too useful. I mean, I guess that can happen, but I'm gonna show you guys. If you guys rocket punch towards it, like maybe like if you're looking like around this area, not directly at it, but if you're looking like right there, and you turn and you press space, it's like you're technically standing here, rocket punching at it and pressing space. So it looks something like this. So that's another useful thing with turn punching. Now this thing, if I rocket punch at it and press space at the right time, I can get a bounce off of it, which is nice. But if I'm standing over here and I rocket punch and I look to the left and I press space, I will get another bounce off of it. You see? I could do the same thing if I'm on the right side. I just have to rocket punch, look to the right, and press space. So turn punching into bouncing is very useful. So once you understand how to do that, and once you master that, you can bounce off of anything. You can bounce off of this if I don't mess it up. Okay, I'm messing it up. I think it's only this angle that works properly. Yeah, there you go. You can like literally bounce off of anything in this video game. There's certain spots that are a little bit too high where you can't really bounce off of them, so you might have to press space a little bit more earlier. I'm gonna show you guys a little trick on, what is that map called? Watch Point Gibraltar, yeah. So I'm gonna show you guys two little tricks with bouncing off of something. So if we come over here, if I try to bounce off of this, it's a little difficult. So I can try to jump first and then figure out the height and then try to bounce off of it. And that's also, once again, difficult. But it's definitely possible. I can climb up there. But, so, as I taught you guys earlier, if you were to press space right here as late as possible to get the maximum bounce, that's cool and all, but sometimes it doesn't work because the object you want to bounce off is just a little bit too high. So if I were to press space around like right here, a little bit more earlier, I can actually get a bounce off of it. You see? I didn't press it right here, I pressed it all the way back here. But that's because it just depends on the it depends on the height of the object, so it's very dependent. But that's also possible. That's another trick on how to bounce off of things. Now bouncing downwards, it's very specific in terms of like what you want to do with it, and it's kind of difficult. I personally haven't really practiced it because I haven't found too big of a use for it, but I'll show you guys how to do that. Hopefully I don't mess it up, but I'm trying to see if this is a good spot to do it on. It's hard to find a spot I could really do it on. Basically, if I rocket punch and I press space and I use my head to hit something like up there, I'll be able to get a downwards bounce. You see? I press space and I kind of got pushed downwards, and that's how you get like a downwards bounce. It's very specific, but I mean, I guess you could somehow find a use for it. Like, let's say I didn't have to use uppercut to get up there. You could be like that. Like, it's very unexpected, because like instead of being like this and your character's falling down really slow, you can press space to hit your head on something and fall down. I mean, I never really practiced it or found too many spots with it, but that's what you could use it for. Another trick with uppercut, you can use it to gain distance. You just kind of have to figure that out on your own, but just by practicing. But like if you're to uppercut, you can hit like I guess you can call it uppercut bouncing. You can kind of hit like this corner and you'll get pushed forward with your uppercut. It's really useful to get out of spawn quicker and to gain more distance with your slam. You see how I got pushed a little bit forward? Like, you can even get it pushed backwards, so it's like, it's pretty useful if you figure out like the exact spot to use it on. You see how I gained a lot of distance from that uppercut? It's just really useful to get out of spawn quicker. I mean, it just takes practice to figure out when to press shift. You see? Yeah, so that's pretty much some advanced tricks for Doomfist. The next thing I'm gonna go over is a few slam things, like using slam and how to get more damage out of it, and quote unquote a new trick. I don't know if I would say I found it, but like I personally want to figure out how it worked, and yeah, so that'll probably be in the next video, and I'll go over diagonal punches a little bit more in the next video as well. But yeah, if you guys have any other questions, just let me know, and I might make a guide for it, or I'll explain it in the chat. Oh, and another thing, you could bounce off of breakables, if you guys don't know that. Oh, I already broke it. Yeah, there you go. You can bounce off of breakables if you press space at the right time. Just don't break it when you punch it. So yeah, thanks for watching.